Yeah, it took a while. All right, we live though. Hi, my name is Tyriece something.
Elijah Jones.
This is a special. Well, it's not special. We do a show every week now, but this is MMA Renegade episode 33,
Whoop, whoop.
recapping UFC Fight Night, Fight Island 6. A little bit of boxing as well. Elijah, how you doing?
I can't complain. This is the first one of the first. Sorry, not one of the first. Sorry, one of the two sunny days we've had all week. In my opinion, it's been the weather's been so I'm happy to see on another Sunday we get a little bit of sunshine. How are you? I'm good though, by the way. Thank you for asking.
I'm doing good, man. It's a nice Sunday. Gonna move around a little bit. Maybe go shopping a little bit, but other than
Hey,
that, I'm relaxing.
treat yourself,
Yeah, yeah. It's about to be Christmas time, so yeah,
bro.
a lot of Christmas shopping.
It's officially that time.
Yeah.
We're halfway. We're more than halfway through October. At this
Mm-hmm.
point, Thanksgiving's here, Black Friday's here.
Yep.
Before you know it, everyone's taking off for Christmas if they're still working, and then
Yep.
boom, Christmas time.
So, definitely just do the best you can to stay safe going shopping. I see people trying to go into malls and stuff like that without masks, so
Hmm.
always be careful.
Just be smart about it. That's all we ask.
Just be smart. All right, man. This is your job.
Let me thank you, my good man. Last night we have what will be UFC's 180th fight night. Last night UFC put on what would be another spectacular performance in their repertoire of UFC Fight Island 6. Last night we had the main event. Chan Sun Young, the Korean Zombie, a man who's been known in the featherweight division as one of the most push forward, heavy, aggressive style, brawler like styles. And then we had him face Brian T. City Ortega, T standing for Triangle City, who's a man who has a background in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, a black belt, and has looks to bring the heat to get back into title contention. Now, we know this fight in its own right has been within the last couple of months taken aside, taken off, taken on, taken off cards. We know that there's been a little bit of bad blood, nothing terrible, but bad blood between these gentlemen, mostly in the form of fighting over what a friend said and a friend getting smacked here, and some people feel like that
Pretty
shouldn't
big
have gone
deal.
down.
Pretty big
Pretty
deal.
big deal in
Pretty big
terms of
deal.
pretty big deal in leading up to this fight, correct? So
Right.
UFC 180, UFC Fight Night 180 was the culmination of a couple of months of the back and forth between T City versus the Korean Zombie. Last night in our main event, actually went the full distance. Last night we had Brian Ortega emerging victorious after a 5-round unanimous decision, 50-45. All three judges called it that way. Tyreece, before we jump into the fight itself,
Yeah.
let's discuss how we thought this fight was going to play out.
Right. So me and you both had Chan Sung Jung beating um Brian
Brian
Ortega.
Ortega.
Brian Ortega.
Yeah.
The reason why I had Chan Sung Jung beating Brian Ortega because the momentum the Korean Zombie was on Chan Sung Jung.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I thought his striking and his power and his pressure was going to be too much, and it was going to force Brian Ortega to make a mistake,
Yeah.
and he was going to catch Brian Ortega. What I didn't predict, this is credit to Brian Ortega, is Brian Ortega's ability to get better and to have a great game plan going into the Chan Sung Jung fight. And I'm interested to know what the mentality of Chan Sung Jung was going into the fight because I took notice of it when Bruce Buffer is doing the announcements,
Mm-hmm.
and then you see pan to Chan Sung Jung, he's taking a deep breath, and I thought that was really interesting because I thought maybe he's a little nervous, maybe he's a little gun shy, what's going
Mm-hmm.
on, and then it just seemed like it just played out to where it's like Chan Sung Jung didn't seem like he was really in the fight at all.
Yeah.
And once he eventually got into the fight, it was already too late. Brian Ortega already found his groove, he found his confidence, and he was able to be able to get rounds ahead of Chan Sung Jung.
I agree. Again, we had called in the beginning of the fight. We had originally believed that the Korean Zombie was going to be the more dominating force because we thought that with his countering ability, with his power, with his boxing, it may be a little bit more to the point where T City is going to have to shoot, right? He's going to have
Right.
to mix it up. But what we didn't expect from Brian Ortega was the way that he was going to evolve as an artist with all this time off, right? He had
Mhm.
faced a couple of injuries, I believe, before this fight or leading up to this fight. And I know he had suffered like a knee injury, and then I know Karrion Zombie had fought Frankie Edgar, and he had beat Frankie Edgar. But with this fight, what we saw in the first round was the first round really was going to dictate how this fight goes, right? Do we have Chan Sung Young countering everything, or finding the timing immediately and then knocking him out, or would T City be able to find his rhythm and kind of make it a standing affair? And he did. That first round was really determinant of what happened, and it was actually very surprising. I was very surprised to see how much T City had evolved. I mean, I know this is a guy who you had when he first got in the UFC. You were talking about him, and then he was been on our radar up until the Max fight, and we were like, well, he'll be back. We knew he'd be back, but we wanted to know who he'd be back against, and we thought that with an opponent like Chan Sung Young with his momentum, we were like, damn, that's going to be a really hard fight for him. But after seeing last night, that boy came back better. That man is ready. That man was ready. He was ready for the fight last night. I will say that. What was interesting is that in the Holloway fight, he stayed in the southpaw stance, and then he got touched up a lot, and that's where he found a lot of issues. But then in the orthodox stance, he found success in the Holloway fight in the third round. That's when he started to mount that offense, that really good, the first a couple of minutes of that third round, he was teeing off on Max, hitting him, catching him. This whole fight, he predominantly stayed in his southpaw stance. And Chan Sung Young had a lot of issues with not only the jab, the leg kick, the just in general, he pushed forward. And it seemed that Brian Ortega was just the quicker fighter, right? It didn't seem like Chan Sung Young waited too long for the counter. And then waiting too long for the counter, Brian Ortega would wait and then strike. So that brief delay causes a delay in the counter, which causes a delay in his reaction. So now you're just waiting and waiting and waiting, and the accumulation of a damage over time was really the key to success or the victory success for Ortega.
Yeah, with Brian Ortega, you know what? I gotta go back, and I think we may have talked about the Max Holloway and Ortega fight. I thought Max Holloway was just absolute. That's probably Max Holloway's best performance. Is just him picking apart in his career. Him picking apart
that or the Aldo 2 fight.
Yeah, that's fair. But like the Brian Ortega fight was accumulation of rounds where he just picked them apart.
Agreed.
And I think we may have said, okay, Brian Ortega may be in trouble because of him. If he can't grapple with you, he can strike with you, but like him in these close exchanges is not good for him. And the thing I noticed in this fight was Brian Ortega, for the most part, kept his distance. And then when Chan Sung Young tried to go on the inside, he would use the leg kicks, he would use the jab, he would do he fought like he was the bigger fighter.
Which is interesting because I think he's only maybe an inch taller than him. He's not much bigger than him. And it's not like he had a crazy reach, but you're right. He used his distance very well in this fight.
Right. And the thing about Chan Sung Young, I think Daniel Cormier may have brought this up during the broadcast, is it a case where the time zone where they're at now is affecting the fighters?
It's a possibility. It's a possibility. There was someone last night that fought and was like, James Vick. James Krause.
Yeah, James Krause.
James Krause. That's also James Vick. My bad. James Vick also got released, unfortunately. Great fighter, but I wish him the best in his future endeavors. James Krause fought last night. He was like, I'm tired.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's interesting, in fact, because no one else has brought that up, right?
Yeah.
You don't hear that too much. So I was like, maybe this time zone, the changing, it could affect them, right? Because they're fighting late into the night, no? Maybe early morning.
And I think Aaron Bronstetter, TSN from Toronto, he brought the point that fighters are like the times of when they're fighting is like super ridiculous to where like the sleep schedule and stuff like that is all out of whack. And you have to kind of go to Abu Dhabi to kind of get used to it.
It's like if you go to a your high altitude place, you don't want to go within the week. Like if you're gonna go if you're gonna go late, you might want to go the day of, a couple days before, so that way your body is adjusting and it doesn't hit you as hard as it could, right? Or you want to go significantly more before, that way your body gets acclimated, like the Verdum versus the Mark Hunt fight. Verdum spent all this time in Mexico at a higher altitude, and Hunt came in a little later, short notice, but it is what it is. But it was easier for Verdum to kind of pace himself than it was for another one. And then again, the same happened with Cain Velasquez.
Yeah.
So it's a big. You're right. when we take into account the whole Fight Island, we have to take into account all aspects of the fight camp, right? We're talking about nutrition, we're talking about sleep schedule, especially if you're fighting way of the morning, early morning, like 1, 2 in the morning over there. It's not as easy as one would think.
Right. Yeah, I thought Chan Sung Jung from the minute it started. When you look at
Seemed off.
he seemed off. Like when you see the introductions, you see him taking a deep breath, and that's like body language to me is always a telltale sign going into a fight or getting
Yeah.
ready to fight. Because usually with the body language of being too stiff or he seems like he's feeling the pressure, that takes a toll on a fighter in the fight. And it seemed like Korean Zombie was just waiting for that big shot and just waiting and waiting and waiting. And Brian Ortega was on his gas pedal the whole entire fight.
Yeah. And Brian Ortega didn't seem to be huffing and puffing, didn't seem to
No.
lose a lot of steam. Brian felt comfortable, and I think that's what really carried him. Once he got to the second or third, I want to say the third round is where you saw that. I think that's when he dropped him with that spinning back elbow, right?
The second round.
The second round, when he caught him with that spinning back elbow, you saw that comfortableness where he kind of was like going for the finish, but then kind of eased up a little bit. It was like, all right, cool, position, punch, position, punch, while standing, and that guard position, standing guard arm. So it was interesting, but overall, in my opinion, I think this is a big takeaway for Brian Ortega, right? Because
Yeah.
a lot of people would have counted him out after the Holloway fight, but this is a testament not only to Holloway's skill because Holloway is high in volume and pushes forward, but realistically, now you have to worry about Ortega's hands. Like you knew he had hands before, you knew he was striking, but his creativity is starting to come into play now. Because last night, not only was I seeing those kind of oblique kicks, he was throwing those side oblique kicks. He's throwing those side kicks, to the thigh, which stop. With someone like Korean Zombie who's so very heavy on that lead leg to throw the overhand, to throw the counter hooks and things like that. If you can't if you can't set the lead leg, you're not going to be able to generate that power that you're usually used to generating, like in the Hanato Moicano fight, right? Chan Sung-young slips, those hook, right? Slip those cross, and it's just like, whoa, like you can't, if you take away that front leg, it's kind of hard. And then I just thought it was a very excellent game plan on Ortega's part.
No, yeah, he had a very excellent game plan. Henry Gracie was not with Ortega for this fight. I think Ortega's with a new training camp now too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they were saying that he not that he had moved, but he definitely had different people in his corner this fight.
Yeah,
but maybe that could be wrong.
I meant to see more. I'm interested to see more information about that and how this new training camp has helped him out and just seeing how he's evolved with them than his old training camp. But ultimately, now we have to talk about whether Brian Ortega is the #1 contender for the featherweight title. I asked you, Elijah, is Brian Ortega the #1 contender?
It's an interesting area, right? Because with the last few years of the featherweight division, we have 5 people whose names have rung out the most. We have Max Holloway, who is the former champion, beat Brian Ortega, hasn't been able to fight Chan Sung-young due to timing, also due to Chan Sung-young recently coming back from the Korean Army. Then we have Yair Rodriguez, we have Zabit Magomed Sharapov, and then we have Calvin Kattar. Those are the guys right now who are at the top.
Yep.
Right? When you look at those names, Calvin Kattar has lost to Zabit. Brian Ortega has lost to Holloway. Holloway has lost in his second fight to Alexander Volkanovski. So it's really kind of a very cloudy area for featherweight. Now, Brian Ortega, the clear-cut #1 contender? I wouldn't say yes. I would go with no. My opinion is that maybe have him fight Zabit, right? Because one fight doesn't. You lost to Max Holloway. Max Holloway lost to Volkanovski in the rematch, which I think Max Holloway won, but that's neither here nor there, right? Volkanovski is now the champion. The guy you lost to is now really technically 1 fight away. So which in theory, if you're a fan or you understand somewhat of MMA math, that should make you 2 fights, which now with an impressive victory over Chan Sung-young puts you 1 fight away. So I would love to see Zabit versus Brian Ortega for the #1 contender. But given the state of UFC, given who can fight, who can't fight, getting a visa, getting people to Fight Island, people testing, I wouldn't be upset if Brian Ortega got a title shot, but that I feel like that could be rushing things. How do you feel?
I'm pretty much on the same wavelength as you. I think that Brian Ortega had a great performance last night.
Great performance.
I don't know if he is the rightful consensus number one contender
No.
because you have Zabit, you have Calvin Kattar. Well, Calvin Kattar, that Zabit fight is interesting because that was a 3-round fight, and Calvin Kattar was on strong in the third round, and that was a main event.
Yeah.
So any normal circumstances, that would have been a 5-round fight, and we could have seen maybe Calvin Kattar get the nod in a 5-round fight over Zabit. So we'll never know, but that one's always tricky.
A lot
Because
of people, sorry, not to just
yeah,
sidetrack. A lot of people have been saying this is the second time. That was actually the second instance where people were saying if Zabit was to go the full 5 rounds, they don't know
yeah,
if he would have won because
yeah,
in the fight with Jeremy Stevens was actually
you're right.
close
Yeah.
to winning that third round. But I'm sorry, go ahead, continue.
No, you're right. So I would love to see. I think the number one contender fight should be Zabit versus Brian Ortega.
Hundred
I think
percent.
that would be a great fight. And then, but the only problem with that is that leaves Alexander Volkanovski out without a fight. And I wonder if not Brian Ortega, who is the person that should fight Alex Volkanovski?
It can't
Do
be
you
Holloway.
do you do Max Holloway 3?
No. Why? The reason why you can't do 3 is because Max hasn't fought since their fight, right? What we know that if you've gotten a rematch back to back and you lost, it becomes much more harder for you to get that third match. Why? Because regardless, it becomes much harder because then that there's so much more people you have to beat now in order to get back to the belt. But Max Holloway is a special case, and the reason I say this
Yeah.
is that he may be able to get a third match, just maybe in one match or two matches, is because Max Holloway defeated Jose Aldo. Not only did he perform in that second match, it's arguable that he won.
Mm.
And with the wrestling, he beat Ortega, and so the argument could be made that if he beat a guy who's fighting for the number one championship, decisively finished him because the guy could, the guy had a doctor stoppage. The guy wouldn't have been able to really go out in the fifth round in his best performance with that huge cookie on his eye.
Right.
One could make the argument saying that Max Holloway is still the best in their division right now, aside from Volkanovski. He's the number one. He's the number one contender. So realistically, if Max Holloway was to somehow if the Brian Ortega and Zabit fight were to happen, right?
Yes.
And
Okay.
then let's say someone got injured, you slide Max Holloway in there. If Max Holloway fights for that third time for that featherweight belt, if he's interested, we don't know what's going on. He's taking a lot of time off. He hasn't. I haven't seen. I follow him on Instagram. He hasn't shown any necessary like, hey, like I'm going right back to a title belt or anything like that. The man's taking time. He's doing what he should. So it's really hard. It's really hard to say what happens with Holloway. But for the featherweight division as of right now in UFC's current state, it's got to be Zabit versus Brian Ortega. I just don't think he's the number one fighter.
No, I don't think Brian Ortega. I think Brian Ortega is definitely in the top 3.
Top 3? Hell yeah, of course.
I don't think Brian Ortega gets the shot after a 2-year layoff beating Korean Zombie. Unless there's nobody available to fight Alexander Volkanovski, which is also the case. But I do think Max Holloway versus Alexander Volkanovski 3 can happen right away. Can happen at the end of this year because of the fact that you brought up is the fact Max Holloway, and a lot of people think Max Holloway won that rematch.
Yeah.
And it all depends on if you're Max Holloway's manager, do you vouch for, hey, we need to go for a rematch. We can finish the trilogy, or do you say let's have somebody else fight Volkanovski? Maybe they get the belt off of Volkanovski, then we fight that person.
I think Max as a person, if we're going Max as a person, will want to fight Volkanovski, right? He wants to fight the best of the best. But if we're talking management's different. Management does hopefully does what's best for the person's image. I'm sorry, for their client's best interest. In theory, having the belt transfer, could be potentially easier than having to fight Volkanovski again. But since he's fought Volkanovski again, they kind of know each other. So at this point, they're just hard sparring. That's all they're doing, right? So in fighting a good fight and knowing how to beat the guy who has beaten you twice on record, I think it presents a pretty good thing for Max Holloway, but it could present a little bit of troubles in the mental aspect, right? Because it's like, what do I have to do to get a win over this guy, right? Like the first time I lost, right? Like he beat me with leg kicks. The second time we fought, he caught me with leg kicks, but I pushed through it. I was able to decisively win 3 rounds, right? And then he won the last 2, which is fair. But in theory, it's never gone. It's never gone. It's never gone to Max Holloway's way. So if I'm a fighter, right, and I'm not saying that anyone's perfect, but if I'm a fighter, I need to know what has to happen in order for me to win for the judges. There's less that has to go into thinking about that when you fight someone like Zabit or Brian Ortega again.
Yeah.
Right? Because now you just got to deal with the surprises, which is in any fight, right? You have to deal with the unknown or uncertainty of any fight. So that's one. But if you have to deal with what the judges will see versus what they won't see, that's another additive that I wouldn't necessarily want on myself.
Mm-hmm.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But again, Holloway could welcome it. But if I'm manager, like you were bringing up, I would push for the Volkanovski fight again, because I think
Really?
Max has if I'm management, if I'm Holloway's manager, why not? I think you could beat the guy. You almost beat him in you almost beat him in the second fight. I thought you did. Why not?
I'm just taking it from this perspective. If I'm again managing Holloway, I'm thinking, okay, we arguably could have won the second fight. We didn't win the second fight.
Yeah, didn't win, but arguably.
So let's say, for instance, Ortega is the number one contender. Ortega fights Volkanovski. Ortega is a big featherweight. He's also has the grappling and the grappling jiu-jitsu skills to where is Alex Volkanovski going to take Ortega down? That's a question. So if I'm Max Holloway's manager, I'm looking at this. Okay, if Ortega was to somehow beat Alex Volkanovski, which if this Brian Ortega 2.0 was to fight Alex Volkanovski, he wins. Okay, now Max Holloway versus Ortega 2. That's interesting now, because Max Holloway has a win over Ortega. I like Max Holloway match. I think Max Holloway matches up well against Ortega, and you can get your belt back.
Agreed. Again, the route that most likely will happen, given it comes down to two things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who's available to fight, right? Because remember, we're still in a pandemic around the world. We have to get licenses. We have to have all these checks, right?
Right.
And it's who's available to fight, one, and at that moment, who's not injured.
Yeah.
So that's really it. Just depending on who's available to fight at the moment. At this moment, that's really it.
Is the beat as I won't say as popular, but like as hyped as he is?
I think Zabit, yeah,
and well earned too.
Well earned.
Zabit hasn't had a 5-round fight.
No, and I think one 5-round fight is all he needs. I think you only need one to put him into that contention, which would be interesting, because if what you're saying is going to happen where Ortega gets the belt, that's fine. Let's speed up the division, right? Let's just get it going.
Fuck it. Gets the belt.
Yeah, fuck it. Let's just throw him in the cage. Let him see who scrap, right?
Exactly.
On that same card, you could also have Holloway versus Zabit.
You could.
That I like that scenario significantly better at the beginning of next year, right? Because now that you do that, you also set up a fight for spring for the number one contender. Right. Easy. We just solved the UFC's crisis.
Yeah, I like it. I like that. Actually.
It is what it is. You want to progress a division, especially a division that hasn't been moving, right? This division hasn't been moving since Holloway lost the belt. Like, it just is what it is. Yeah. He's been such a great champion. He fought again. He unfortunately lost by the judges' eyes. Here we are. That fight occurred last year?
It occurred last year in December, and then COVID happened and injuries happened, and it took a while to get the fight going.
Yeah.
So they were supposed to fight in June in Perth, Australia, but then that fight got scrapped because of COVID.
Yeah.
So, I guess I like that scenario where Max Holloway has to fight Zabit, somebody that has to earn the number of contenders.
Earn that. Take his spot.
Max Holloway beats if Zach Holloway beats Zabit or loses to Zabit, it pretty much confirms where he stands in the featherweight division.
Yeah.
And then you have some fresh blood for the title.
Not only that, you could also, after that, Holloway could decide to go to lightweight. He can try to mix it up. Let's get the division going. We have a guy who arguably could fight for the title. Mm-hmm. If he does, I don't think anyone would be upset. In my opinion, I don't think there's anyone on the list of featherweights right now who could be upset. There's no one. Holloway just fought. Brian Ortega's number 2. Give the number 2 guy a title shot. And that's it. Is there any other fights for you on this card that kind of stuck out, or?
Well, let me ask you this: where does Korean Zombie go from here? And for the viewers watching, thank you for watching. Please comment. Let us know what you think about Ortega. Whether Ortega is the rightful number 1 contender. Where does Korean Zombie go from here?
Korean Zombie right now is at a point. He's not out of it. He's not out of it, right? We know that this is just one instance where he's had a loss in his last 3 or 4 showings.
Right.
So it is what it is. I think now we do some redrawing to the board. We go back and redo some rethinking. We don't
Mm,
change a lot. Maybe just a little bit more pressure, a little bit more, slips. Just we want to change the overall game of pushing forward to take the damage. Right. We want to decrease the damage, increase the defense, but keep pushing forward.
right.
With that being said, I would like to see Chance Young versus a guy again when we get Yair Rodriguez too. Maybe we get Calvin Kattar. That would be a great fight for Calvin Kattar. Or if we I think those are the two people, only in my opinion. We get Yair Rodriguez Zombie 2, or we get
Mm,
Calvin Kattar. But I think Calvin Kattar is the more likely. Because Calvin Kattar is on a slow rise. Unfortunately, with the top locked like the way it is, he's on a slow rise to the top, but he's gaining traction. And a
right.
lot of people are realizing that with the high win over Dan Iggy, the way he performed,
Mm.
I 100% think the next fight for him would be someone like Korean Zombie.
I say you do Chan Sung Jung versus Calvin Kattar,
Mm-hmm.
and if you want to get crazy, I would love to see Barboza versus Yair Rodriguez.
That
Cause
is
I thought,
crazy.
cause I
That
thought,
is crazy.
I thought Yair Rodriguez. I mean, I thought Barboza beat Dan Ige. If we're being completely honest.
I think a lot of people did.
So I think if this Barboza, I think Barboza versus Yair Rodriguez would be a crazy fight regardless of the fact. But
Agreed.
I think it makes sense. I
Yeah,
think it makes sense for both styles. That'd be a great main event.
I think both. I think both of them, if they either of them wins,
Mm,
I think it's great for their career at featherweight. Why? Because a name like Edson Barboza under your name as under your belt as Yair Rodriguez puts
right,
you back into that spectacle, right? You beat a guy who's known for having one of the, if not one of the most impressive spinning head kick knockouts in UFC,
right,
right? If not the one of the most, and I'll be honest with you, it's probably the right.
right,
And then if Edson Barboza beats Yair Rodriguez, he's top five. He
right.
would be top five, and he can, given the division again,
Go straight to a title.
he could go straight to a title fight,
Yeah,
1 to 2 fights away.
yeah.
So that let's again, more importantly, get the division moving. That matchup would be phenomenal sometime next year, and I guess Calvin Kattar versus Chance Young would be a great matchup sometime next year.
Agreed. Were there any other fights in this card that stuck out to you or that impressed you?
Well, I'm thinking we're going to talk about the big elephant in the room. Caitlin
Yep,
Chugagian unfortunately lost to Jessica Andrade, and
yep,
I got to be honest with you. We were talking last night before the fight. We're like, yeah, like Chugagian might win that. We don't know if like her being just too big and she's going to be able to use that range and size, but holy shit,
yeah.
Jessica Andrade has found revitalization at at bantamweight. Oh, sorry, is it bantamweight?
Flyweight.
Or is it flyweight? Yeah, there we go. She's at a good healthy weight, right? What's interesting is when you go back and look at the second Rose fight, Jessica Andrade was winning. She was close to winning that third round, and some people thought she won the round. It's hard, it's a great fight. Ended up hurting Rose a little bit more. I think at 125, she's healthier, she's strong, she's incredibly strong the way she took down Caitlin Chukagian. I was impressed by that, and I was impressed by the body shot that ended up hurting Caitlin Chukagian because Caitlin Chukagian, not only after the first liver shot, turned around and was like you could see the visible
Right,
pain in her face. She tried to continue, and Jessica Andrade just went for it. I mean,
right.
talk about I go. Like those the Vine thing, dun, dun,
Yep,
dun, dun,
yep,
run.
yep.
She just went straight for it, and I was impressed. So I think Jessica Andrade with no title contenders for Valentina Shevchenko, give her a title shot. What's the worst that could happen?
I agree. I think we spoke about it before, and you guys laughed me out the room when I talked about Jessica Andrade fighting.
We did, we
Well,
did.
you laughed me out the room, but you forget that Jessica Andrade once fought at bantamweight at one point in time.
I
So
mean flyweight, flyweight.
no bantamweight.
Oh, she fought at bantamweight.
Yeah.
Sheesh,
Remember there was no
sheesh.
120. Remember there was no 125.
Yeah, true,
So
true,
before
true, true.
before she went down to strawweight, she fought at bantamweight.
Which is even crazier in my
You
opinion.
know, So
She's so
I think
small.
Brian. I think she is small for the division. I think that
Yeah.
you know, who's to say that she's going to have success against yeah. I mean,
Shevchenko.
she fought against people like Raquel Pennington and back in the day. So
Mm.
it's Liz Carmouche. So like it's gonna be interesting to see how she fares against somebody like Valentina Shevchenko, who is way bigger. But I think that's a good That's a
That's a good
good
fight.
that's a
That's
good
a good
fight
fight.
where it's the former strawweight champion going up to fight Valentin Shevchenko.
Yeah,
That's a great main attraction fight. Doesn't mean I think Shevchenko's gonna lose to Andrade, but I think that's a great matchup and a great um premier fight.
agreed. I agreed. I think that's just and overall, I think it's a good fight. I think it's a good fight.
What's up, Flat Politics?
Go ahead. Nice to see you again, man.
Um, so yeah, I think Jessica Andrade versus Valentin Shevchenko after Valentin Shevchenko's next fight makes sense.
It does. I think it. Who else? Yeah. Again, who else is there? So
You know, uh, Cynthia Calvillo. That's a name. That's a fighter that
we could.
may slide into that spot too.
We may see a number one contender fight
There you go.
before we. Yeah, that's a great fight.
Yeah. There you
As far as that would maybe that may be it for me. But if you want to go ahead and talk about someone else who you found was interesting last night.
Yeah. I thought the Garam Kutaladze versus Matisse Gamrot fight. We thought it was really good. It weren't fight of the night last night, and I thought it was really good.
Both.
Gamrot was heavily touted as this big prospect, this big big signee. Sorry,
Yeah,
signee for UFC from KSW.
yeah.
The former lightweight champion, undefeated going into this fight. And I thought Kataladze came in and showed out. And somebody that wasn't even on the radar of the UFC, it seems like he was just with what's his name? The guy that's taking over welterweight and middleweight now.
Who?
Uh,
Kamzat.
yes,
Kamzat.
Smasher.
What's
Yep.
interesting? What's interesting about these guys? I was watching this night, and they look like welterweights to me.
Yeah.
Did they not like? It's interesting. You see the shift in the divisions, like the size, right? Because lightweights used to be closer towards Frankie Edgar, Benson Henderson,
Mm-hmm.
Michael Chandler. Now you have these guys who are just big, who are big and making the weight. And last night was a display of these guys were really bringing it. I was impressed. I was impressed by what's it called, Kutatelatsi.
Yeah. I thought he was really big for lightweight. So
He's
uh,
big. He's a big
yeah,
boy. He's a
yeah.
big boy.
I'm interested to see where he goes from next. I thought he was excellent on the ground. He
Agreed.
went for a heel hook to try to get up from his feet. It was really good. So and Gamrot too. I think his stock didn't go down. I think he
No.
is. I'm interested to see where he goes from next. I think they're both two fighters that actually had a great debut.
Yeah, I think again, this is it's your debut, right?
Yeah.
I think the debut is never really the best judge of how you're going to be in UFC because we have people who've lost their debut and have gone to be champion.
Right.
That happens, right? So I think but they both brought it last night. You know who else actually surprised me? Jonathan Martinez. He's a
Yeah.
sleeper at 145.
Yeah. Great.
A
Great showing
lot of
against
people.
Almeida.
That man and Thomas Almeida was like the next biggest thing until he fought Cody Gambrandt, and
Yeah.
Cody Gambrandt ended up knocking him out.
Mm.
It was you know who you are.
Yeah.
You know who you are in this world. But anywho, yeah, Jonathan Martinez, he's a sleeper. So I bet he'll be in top 10 within the next year or two. I want to say he'll be in top 10. I don't know if top 5 how he's gonna make that, but top 10 definitely, or top 15 at least.
Yeah, Jillian Robinson had a great performance.
Yeah.
James Krause hurt his leg, but I thought he had a great performance against Claudio Silva.
Yeah.
I want to see James Krause fight somebody in the top 15 in
I want to
the
see
division.
that
I think
there's no issue with James Krause, right? At 6'2", moving up from lightweight to welterweight, he's found a lot more success. He's definitely been able to put together a hell of a lot more at welterweight than he has. And he's only had one loss at welterweight against Trevin Giles, which was he has no losses at welterweight and one loss at middleweight.
right.
I think if we want to capitalize now, James Krause could do it. I think this could be a moment where he wanted to get just fighting a little bit more towards a belt. But that depends on if James Krause wants to do that. He's a Factory X guy, and he just doesn't seem like he wants to fight as much.
Yeah, I definitely think he deserves an opportunity to fight somebody in the top 15. Maybe, and if that doesn't work out, doesn't work out. But I think he deserves the opportunity to have that chance to fight somebody in the top 15 and go
I
over
agree.
the rankings.
I
And then
agree.
lastly, Said Nurmagomedov had a great performance as well with a knockout over Mark Striegel. Mark Striegel. Sorry, Striegel. Great performance, knockout in the first round. I think it was only 50 seconds. Great performance and debut for him, and I'm interested to see where he goes from there.
I'm sorry, James Krause doesn't fight at Featherweight. It says Glory MMA. That's my
Yeah,
fault. Glory
yeah.
MMA.
I think he owns a gym in Kansas City.
Yeah, he owns that gym. But
Yeah,
yeah, no, that was impressive knockout to start the fight with a
yeah,
big name and always a lot of pressure as a Nurmagomedov. I'm proud. I thought it
yeah.
was good. I was impressed.
Ultimately, what would you give this card, Elijah?
The fight versus Chan. This is the first time I'm going to do this. The fight versus Chan Sung Young was great,
Mm-hmm.
but aside from that, I want to give this card maybe a B minus, B
Okay.
minus C plus. I'm between the two, but I'm gonna be nice. I'm gonna go B minus. I'm gonna go B minus.
I'm gonna go with um I'm gonna go with a solid B. I'm
Yeah,
gonna go with a
yeah.
solid B. I think it was a solid card. I thought Jimmy Crute was another great performance we didn't talk about. I think
Ooh, Jimmy Crute.
I
That
thought
man's dangerous.
yeah, I thought Jessica Andrade had a great performance against Caitlin Chikagian. There was some other.
Yeah,
I thought the like we said the Gamrot versus the Ketelowski fight
it
was
was pretty
entertaining,
good.
and it's rare that two people debuting at the same time, both their stock goes up. Um,
Yeah,
so that was
rarely, hardly ever,
yeah.
hardly ever.
So I think it's a solid B card. It's a card that you're gonna go back to, like I said, like you said before, go back to when you say, okay, I remember when that person started and that person moved
Hmm.
on, and that's where 2021 you see these fighters grow, and now you see them on bigger stages. So I think it's a B card.
Yeah, agreed,
Yeah.
agreed.
And lastly, before we get out of here, did you see the Lomachenko versus Lopez fight?
I did not because I unfortunately fell asleep.
Okay,
But I
understandable.
watched some highlights in the morning. This morning, I watched I tried to watch as many highlights this morning as possible so I could come and watch. And I want to say, Timofeo, that man, he earned that. I don't know. It was a very close fight though, from what I was seeing in highlights. It wasn't like it was complete and utter domination on his part.
It was.
But
It was for the most part.
oh, it was
Yeah,
dang.
I,
Dude.
I would I would say Lopez won round 1 through 6,
Hmm.
and then everything else it was debatable to where Lomachenko won. I thought the rounds where Lomachenko was really aggressive,
Hmm.
I thought he did a really good job. At the same time, Lopez would end off strong, so
Yeah.
it was never like Lopez was just sitting there taking it. Lopez was able to take some of Lomachenko's aggressive big shots and able to return fire, to which Lomachenko couldn't keep going forward.
You know what was interesting in seeing this fight? Before I even watched the fight, like earlier, I saw like them just like warming up.
Yeah,
And Teofimo, that's I'm pronouncing his name right. Teofimo seemed to be the bigger guy. So initially, I thought, damn, maybe he dances around him, but he was able to. It looked like he was able to eat a lot of big shots to return those inside uppercuts.
yeah,
A lot of the inside uppercuts that he was catching Lomachenko with seemed to be really kind of landing. And it's interesting because George Linares was a guy who fought Lomachenko, and Lomachenko, he was one of the people who knocked Lomachenko down, right? He downed him, and it was interesting because the power, it was the perfect timing, perfect power, perfect setup, ended up dropping Lomachenko. So I thought with the bigger in size, but also having the speed, because I watched Teofimo's some of his highlights, I was
yeah,
like, he could be a guy who beats Lomachenko.
yeah. I thought so. I thought it was a live underdog. I thought it was a big threat to Lomachenko, and I'm
Yeah.
surprised. I didn't want to really talk about this too much because I'm surprised by the narrative that Lopez was looked at as only the power puncher, which
No.
I thought was interesting. So like I
Yeah.
don't like we're more MMA than boxing.
Yeah.
So I don't know that world of Lomachenko and Lopez was only a power puncher, but I thought Lopez's striking and skills, I always thought it was great, and I thought it was going to be a threat if Lomachenko was to fight Lopez. And I thought that's why I was interested in this fight.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, again, we're not boxing. We're not as heavily educated in boxing as we are with MMA. But
Right.
in just researching fighters and understanding fight mechanics and technique and things like that, it looked as if the bigger fighter was going to present a little bit slower for a smaller fighter. But Teofimo's he's talented, and at
Yeah.
23, it's crazy. This man has 4 belts at 23.
Yeah. I thought it was a great performance and a great fight. I was so hyped for that fight card to happen. When it actually happened, it
Yeah,
delivered. So,
he delivered.
a plus for that fight. And there was also some other great performances
There
on
was
that
a
card.
lot of great there was a lot of great fights on that card. I agree. I was watching a little bit before I
Edgar
dozed
Berlanga,
off.
Ellen Berlanga. is somebody I'm looking out for.
The Berlinger fight was good. First round TKO. Then Alex Saucedo versus Arnold Barboza Jr. I think his name.
Yeah,
That fight was pretty interesting. But again, good fights. I was actually pretty impressed.
absolutely, absolutely. So next week we're going to be doing a post show right after Khabib versus Justin Gaethje goes up. We're going to be right here on this channel, on Facebook, on Twitter, doing a post show covering Khabib versus Justin Gaethje. I cannot wait. We are
Same,
finally
bro. Same.
so. Please come back for Justin Gaethje versus Khabib. I want everybody to come together. We're going to talk about it. We're going to see what we thought we had winning, all that. So can't
That's
wait.
gonna be Tyreece. This is the culmination of just if the event that Gaethje does not get his hand raised, which it's gonna go on record now. I'm going Gaethje. I'm going Gaethje. I'm cash. You know how that person at the end of the night in the casino goes,
Yeah.
"I'm all in. I'm all in for Gaethje," and that's not because I want Khabib to win, but because I just think that Gaethje can do it. But with that being said, if he doesn't win, I just don't know who can stop that man. There's just no one in the world. He's again on John Jones level. It's got to be validity to know when nobody could whoop your ass.
Well, we may be talking about a special announcement if he beats Gaethje because there's supposed to be a special announcement if he wins. So
That's what Dana said.
we'll see what happens. But we'll talk about it next week,
Yes, sir.
October 24th, right after Gaethje versus Khabib goes off. Signing off. My name is Tyreece Simon.
Elijah Jones.
This has been an MMA Renegade episode 33. Have a nice day, guys.